Okay, so I already fired up Store Visualizer and I went ahead and opened up this store. Stores you can create yourself from scratch, and you can customize the look and feel of these stores. So let's have a quick look of the lay of the land here. So not much going on here as far as menus, right? So you got open, save as, and that type of stuff. Like to draw your attention here to the product manual, really good. Also the quick start guide, that's pretty good. Most of your actions are going to happen down here. So this part of the screen allows you to switch between different modes, whether you're navigating, you're controlling objects, you are changing the environment parameters, you're activating the physics engine, so the collision, or you're activating the consumer insight model. For each of these, for example, here in the object control mode, you have 3 different types of sub-modes that you can enter in. So as I'm controlling objects, that can either be products that I'm manipulating. For example, I'm taking an object off the shelf and looking at it. That can be during store creation while you're creating these shelves, or that could be in the earliest phase when you are designing these stores, the layout. So also keep an eye on that. And then you have your typical selection tool and stuff like that. On the right hand side, there is a menu right here with 3 different tabs. So you have your project related things. You have tools, which includes your libraries, which are models, your model browser, very important. And then if we scroll down here, we also have more intricate, more granular controls for model lighting as well as model properties, and defining collision envelopes and stuff like that. And then the scene, actually think of that as like a hierarchical tree structure that contains all the elements that are in your store. So everything, including store, the store makeup, the shelves, the products. And here you can select products, you can hide products, and you can also go into material editors where you can set the characteristics of your product. So surface appearance, reflection, transparency. Also, this is where you can assign model metadata, which becomes really important together with the consumer insight module. So once we have our store, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the navigation, and then I'm going to click also on this free look. And now using my arrow keys or my mouse, I can freely look around and or walk through the store. Okay, I can back up, I can go forward, and when I'm done at a certain point, I can hit my escape key. I can also use this pivot point right here, and as we're looking down here, what's also very interesting as you start navigating is you want to take on the point of view of a specific consumer, whether that's male or female. We have standard average heights here for those consumers, or a child. Let's say I'm a 12-year-old child. You can see the vantage point drops a little bit. And then right here, my attention, for example, is drawn here to this Playmobil. So what I can do is I can also use this pivot point and then select an object. And as we select this, I can now, look through this. I actually have to go through this aisle because I didn't move forward. Let me move forward a little bit more. So I'm moving forward, and then I can like pivot around that store looking from any possible angle. Going back, that's disengaging that, going back there. We can also pick items off the shelf. So if I back up a little bit, I select this object. Again, nothing happens. Why? As I mentioned earlier, we're still in the view mode. So what you want to do is you want to move on to the object control mode, and then make sure you're in this product mode, and then select your selection cursor. Right, so now when I click on this, you see right here the little highlights on the corner indicating that we have selected the product. Hitting the P key, P as in product, I can now see this product. I'm a little up close and personal here, so I'm going to go back into this view, back up a little bit, hit my escape key, go back in here, back into my product mode. So now I can look at this Playmobil set right here and look at it in all its glory, and then just hit the escape key or the P key to put that object back on the shelf. As I am selecting this, I can also right click on this. I can move, rotate, and scale. I can hide this object. I can delete it. I can ask to highlight this model in my library. So if I go back into my tools and I scroll back up, we can see here that this was an Esko model that was created in Studio, Toolkit for Boxes. And then it was imported into my library. And so as you import objects into the store, you can group them together in folders or categories. And you can do that by creating here new folders. So right here, I believe, yes, you can create a new folder, and then you can import models using this little toggle right here. So you would select your toy folder, you would click on the import model, and then you would browse to the model that you just created. And so this is where we typically would recommend to use these Collada files, right? And so once here's, I believe, a salad, bag of salad. Let's pick this here. I believe, yeah, that's also a bag. Diaper bag. Let's pick this one here. So I say open. As you're importing models from Esko, I would recommend activating this Esko compatibility thing here. And in this little import menu, you have 5 different tabs to determine scale, geometry, mapping, whether you want to generate a custom UV mapping as you're importing this or not, shader, texture, ambient light, shadow fields, the accuracy of that, lighting, if that was defined, and then you hit the import button. And so now that model will be imported here in my toy folder. It's not really a toy, but and now right here you can see this in your model browser. So again, if I go back to my Playmobil set here, pack number 2, again in here in this model browser you can see this. This is fairly small. So what's really powerful as well is you can hit this little arrow key to peel off this menu and make it floating. As soon as you close it, it will actually snap back into the menu. So I think it's a little better implementation than Illustrator or Photoshop. It makes it really nice to get an up-close view of your models. In here, there's a lot of capabilities to look at the model's properties. The only thing that's really important, I would say, for you in the beginning when you work with this is this little button right here, which allows you to assign the sides of the model. So notice this big green arrow right here, and then this yellow arrow pointing up. So let's say I wanted this to be my principal display panel. I can indicate that. And then when I place the model, this will be the default side known as front. Again, let's keep it like that. And then also something that you might be interested in more for trays, like you see an example of a tray back here. If you want to place a model inside a tray, you want to make sure that the collision envelope is defined properly. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to place the model inside a tray. It'll kind of bounce on the surface of that. And so right here, you can see my collision envelope is the same bounding box as the toy box because that's not really important here. So once we have our model, we can then place the model So notice we are still in object control mode. So now I have a single place or a matrix place. So matrix is shortcut F and single is C for create new object. So which object is the system going to place? The one that we currently have selected. So if I would place this here on the floor for now, follow my cursor right there, notice the yellow arrow is pointing forwards to me. So I'm going to spin on my Mac mouse, I'm going to rotate, and now we can see that green side of the arrow. Remember, that was the front side I defined. So if I click on that, that model will now be placed in a single instance. And then I can come in here and I can place it again and again and again, right? I can even place it on top like so. Or we could do a matrix place. So using the F key, we have our matrix interface. And then it's a matter of clicking and dragging in the X and Y direction. If you want to stack these things up in the third dimension, in the Z-axis, you would actually come into the interface and you can see here X, Y, and Z. So I would just increase the count right there on the Z-axis. What's pretty cool as well, and you can kind of see it also here in the background, is what we call the randomizer. So as we place objects in a retail environment, we don't want to place these like little soldiers, right? It wouldn't look natural, right? You have typically there's some clutter going on. There's products that have been purchased, leaving a void. So with that, here in the interface, you have the capability to specify a randomizer. So randomization can happen globally for the entire stack right here on a offset level like so. So you can increase that number and then hit this randomization. So you can see if you keep an eye on this, this gets randomized a little bit. And then we have randomizers for both X, Y, and Z right here using the random function. So here you can start specifying in X, Y, and Z direction. And then also we have this clutter factor. So this will automatically start removing in random locations some of these products that you placed. So now that we're here, a great tool as well, and you might forget that it's here because it's hidden pretty well. If you go into the settings drop down, you see here that currently this stack of products is considered what we call an array. So think of an array as a group in in Adobe Illustrator, for example. So it's a group of individual products. What I can do is I can break that group up in individual products by using the break to objects. And before we do that, I can also generate a nice report out of here for the specific product. Right here, you can put your company name in there. You can upload a customer logo. You go into the image tab and take a snapshot. You can go to the actual product and indicate your product view, whether you want a split screen, single, or split. Add the model to here, add your comments, and then you can export this to a PDF file. So that gives you a nice individual report. So going back here to my stack, I can select that stack again and show you that if we break this right here to single objects, now each of these objects right here is individually accessible, and I can say, for example, delete for one single object. If I activate my physics engine, that will now affect either a part of the scene or the entire scene. This can get pretty heavy on your CPU. As you can see, maybe I should not have done that because I am working on a MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM, and this store, to give you an idea, is about 110 megabytes. So engaging that physics engine really kind of goes through the entire store and looks at all the physics properties that were assigned to each object. As soon as you've done that and you go back to the product manipulation mode and you go to this move selection, so I'm on the second icon and then switch to move. If I would grab one of these puppies right here and I start moving this, you can see now and push this, you can see that this really, it's a little in slow motion because it is after all a fairly large number of objects going on here. But this really engages that physics, to give you that natural look and feel. I'm going to go ahead and switch that off again. I made quite the mess, to be honest. So also right here in the lower right hand corner, you can see that I am currently pushing my Mac, especially the graphic memory, to 4.6, 4,600, so 4.6 gigs. So that's 108%. So you can see just by looking at the color, you get your green, blue, or red, and you can also get some graphics information right here in case you needed to save that. So we kind of skipped over the shelf and store creation. So let's just look at a shelf for a second. So let me walk forward and look at this wall here and talk a little bit about design, store design and shelf design. So let's start with store design. So store design, I would typically right here switch to my store design mode. Once I switch to my store design mode, I'm going to go to my view mode, and I'm going to go down here on the right hand side and switch to my store layout mode. So this store layout mode, shortcut T, gives me a bird eye view of my store. Okay, so again, everything that I've been doing so far, I can do that as well. So currently I am in the navigation mode. So if I would scroll over or hit my mouse, the software is going to start zooming in. I can also do that right here by using my view height. And I can also choose between a rendered view or a floor plan view. So let's go to a floor plan view and let's zoom out right here. So we can see this is kind of like a mini mall, right? With holding down the shift key, holding down the space bar. And you can see that also in the lower left-hand corner. The software will remind you about these things. So we were looking at this part of the shell of the store right here. Let's hit the escape key to exit. So we were going to add some shelves here. So I could either do that from where I'm at right now. The software comes with standard shelving. So if not, you can go to your library and load those shelves. So those are entire presets that will load. For example, here I have my furniture. I can hit that little plus sign. And then within that, I have a further, sub directories indicating hooks, centers, gondolas, shelf components. So here, for example, I have a standard shelf, this one right there, 133 centimeters. So this is a European one, no worries. So once selected, just like before, I can use my place single. And as I am placing this, again, I can use my mouse to rotate. It's difficult to see if the front is facing forward or not. So for this type of activity, I might actually go back to my regular view. And it was actually over, the placement was over to the left. So I'm just going to add it one more time here. So indeed, it was wrong. So I need to rotate this, the green arrow facing forward, and then I can place it. So as you are placing and you start to build store layouts, you can see if we go back to that store layout and we would move these shelves, that right here, you are able to place these numerically. You can do that very accurately by going in here and saying, for example, I want 4 meters between these. Hit the enter key, and then the distance between these two shelves is exactly 4 meters. No worries, all the units can be set here in inches or metric. I have my language set in English, but my units are set to metric, but you can do both, obviously. So that's a great way to start laying out and making sure, you know, the aisles are spaced properly. Second, as we are looking at these shelves, so let's exit that store view again, and as we start adding in object mode, shelf creation, place, so again, 1, 2, 3, right? Always make sure you're in the proper sequence. We pick our shelf and we place. You'll see here, so using the place tool, you'll see that as you're placing these, you have the option to indicate the distance for those, again, just like we did previously. So if you make a mistake, no worries, you can come in here and you can adjust the shelving. So notice how Store Visualizer also comes with a lighting environment, and depending on where you are situated in the store and your settings, you might have, you know, a little bit too much shadow and environmental parameters going on. So no worries, because you can come in here into this environment tab and you can start changing some of these parameters. So first off, let's look at the static elements. So that's this little icon. So this icon allows you early on in the store design phase to design your store in exactly the way you want. All right, so again, we have different parts in that mini mall. I'm currently in the convenience store. You can click on elements, because wall back, I don't really know if this is the back of that wall. So as you click on those, the software, I hope you can see that, the software will kind of flash if you have selected it. So this obviously is wall right. And then you can start by picking from presets. So tiles, you know, dark tiles, concrete wall with light tiles, polished concrete, gray tiles. We don't want to put carpet on the wall, do we? Right here, bricks. So masonry. And then each of these you can also scale, right? So if the tiles would be too big or too small, you're able to change that. You can also bring in your own. So right here, you can create this in Photoshop, and then you can import this right here. You can load your tile in there and then use that. And as I mentioned here, you can also adjust the size, the starting point, and resizing. Okay, so yeah, right here you can see that. Let me go to shelf creation mode. So you can create shelves also on the fly, and you do that right here. So using this tool, instead of importing libraries or models, you can create the frame or the panel, or the panel. So let's start with the frame. So now the software opens up this shelf editor. So here you can choose between European or US frames, and you can see here a list of standard widths that are included. So let's pick the 102 inch, 102 inches. Right here you see all the parameters for that shelf: back panel, uprights, base deck, brackets, type of bracket, price tag, yes or no. So that will now generate that shelf right here in my library on the fly, and then I can place that. If right there, here's my frame. So now I go back to my placing and we place that. So that's my 102 inch frame. Now, if that would not suffice for what you guys want to do, you would have to create these shelves in a 3D software of your choice. Rhino, Cinema 4D, Modo, you name it. That would all be done also through these shelf components. So hooks, right here you see bar with hooks, right? So you would place, let's see, I don't know if that fits what I just placed, but this one right here, now you got hooks, so you can start placing, right? So you can start placing things over that. So that would actually be done by picking the proper shelving shelving components. So we got beauty shelves, we got checkout shelving, we got a whole bunch of different models in there. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also create your own and then import those. Sure. So we were talking about shadows. So in my store right now, I'm going back to the third icon, environment, and we were talking about components right here. So that's one. The next one over is the reflection zone. So this is where you can set up reflection points. That will create reflection for you. Then we have the spheres and the zones that you can set up. So in my case, you can see here is a sphere that indicates the reflection areas. You got your refresh if you manually want to refresh your reflections. We can disable that after enabling this. And then here we have contrast and shadows, and then we have everything concerning luminosity. So let me show you that once it's done rendering the reflections. So with the luminosity, you can really start creating a certain mood for that store by increasing or decreasing the intensity of your lighting. So right here, for example, by default, we're set to auto exposure. I'm at 45 right now. So if I go down to 25, you see we can really kind of start setting this like lighter, this darker or lighter mood. We also have adaptation and glare that we can specify. And then here we have the light settings. So for example, the indirect shadow strength, bottom shelf right here. So this is way too dark. So let's lighten that up. Light strength. So we want more light there. Reflection intensity. And then normally I have to hit the update. I don't know how long that's going to take. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, because I have this fairly large store, so it's going to update it on every single shelf now. So anyway, once we have set the mood, we can again go to our product manipulation mode and pick the product after importing it. Let's say we want toys, workbench right here. We can now start populating these shelves with our models. So here I didn't worry about how it was positioned. Let's do worry about that. So in the next one, let's turn that before we place it. There you go. So, and then you can start by using again that randomizer that we saw earlier with the, I believe it was product viewer. No, not product viewer. The randomizer or you could break it and then remove products individually. So now, populating shelves can be time consuming, right? As you can imagine, if you have lots of products on there, populating that one at a time can take a lot of time. So that's where the option to import store shelving really pays off. And that's this little icon that you see here. This is what we call planograms. So I don't know if you have another software where you guys have planograms, but I made a quick movie here and posted it on YouTube to show you. And I'll just scroll through here. We won't bore you with the details, but so this is where the story begins, where you have Excel spreadsheet with all your products in it, your SKU codes, whatever that is. So that's a comma separated file. Then you go into that view right here, and you import that planogram. And so as it's importing it, it will then bring it in as one massive shelf right here. And then you can place that a little bit further here in the movie. You see I placed it wrong, but no worries, because we can select it, we can turn it around. There you go. And then the beauty of the software is that by default, there's little two-dimensional little place cards that are used to view the product. But if you have the actual ZAE files, so the collada files, the software will try to map the name of the product in the planogram file to the name of the collada file. If it links it, as you can see here, 3D model linking, it will automatically swap out the 2D little cart for the actual 3D model that you prepared ahead of time in Studio. Then right-clicking on the aisle and using the randomizer right there, random displacement, random clutter, we can start making this look a little better. And apologies for the... and then right here, we can then start doing other things like data acquisition using our consumer insight module. So the consumer insight module allows you to capture input from consumers. So let me see, let's move back to the cash register and go around this dairy aisle here. And I believe, yeah, this one right here. So back up a little bit. Sorry for the movements. They are fairly smooth. If my computer would be a little faster. So the Consumer Insight module allows you to capture information from consumers to analyze and, use that information, that data, in your design process. All right, so let's change a color. Let's put it next to a competitor. Where are kids, male kids between 12 and 16 looking? Where are female girls between 6 and 9 looking? And so there's two major types of data acquisition. There is the quote unquote manual way, and with that I mean touchscreens, keyboard and mouse. Or there's the more immersive one, and that is done by eye tracking. So that's HTC Vive, Tobii, and other headsets. So you can see here that I have consumers that I invited to walk through my store. Let's look at the ones right here: Anthony, Bernard, Chris, and Stephanie. As I select these consumers, you can see some information popping up right here with numbers in it. This is the duration that these consumers were standing in that spot. You can obviously also start filtering. So you can say, hey, I want to focus on gender, on age, and only show me consumers, male, children, for example. And then you can overlay that data. So once we have selected our data sets, we can now look at a timeline. And let's say we're going to look at a 30-second plus or minus from where my playhead is located. So my playhead is here, and I have 4 people. So now we can start visualizing right here. Let's switch the environment to grayscale to bring out these heat maps and go a little closer. And so now we can start visualizing, go back to the Consumer Insight module, and then using this playhead, move this playhead to 10 seconds into it. Keep in mind, I have 4 consumers activated at the same time. I can distinguish between them by color right here on this timeline, and I can see where these consumers were looking. I can do that via a heat map, or I can do that via fixations. So again, there's a lot going on because I have a lot of consumers. Let's go back to our data set, and let's say I only want to see Stephanie, who was wearing an eye tracking device. So I can see that Stephanie had this track. So she started here in the store. She came in, she looked at the bottom first, then she started looking here. She came back, then she looked up on the left. And so you can play this. I'm manually scrolling through here, and you can follow basically the history of where she looked and also the fixation points. So the number that you see here in these circles is the duration that Stephanie was looking at these specific products. So the ultimate goal of this obviously is to collect statistics out of this information, and that's this button right here. So with this button, I can look at information that was captured in a data set using eye tracking metrics. Those are the top ones right here. If my consumers used a mouse or a touch screen, then these will be grayed out, and I will only have access to this right here. So that is actions and shopping behavior and category and move path analysis. So I also have a digital shopping basket, and as customers go through the store, they can decide to look at it, pick it up, and put it in the basket or not. So as I do that, I pick up this product. The software will show me a price tag when I'm in this consumer module, and it will also allow me to place this in the shopping basket or not. And so then I can start really filtering down on metrics I'm interested in. I can look at the pickup ratio or the time, how long did it take for them to come to that buying decision. I can filter by here on brand, sub-brand, category, color, price. Remember, these were all metadata tags that were entered in the scene tab all the way at the bottom attached to these models. This is also information that you can import when you have planograms, so you don't have to manually enter this. We can express this in percentage. We can invert this from quickest to longest, and then we can generate statistics right here, pie charts or bar charts, and we can also view this right here, this product in 3D. So if I look, for example, at a number of gazes, I can see that right here, this is a very popular product. It had 100% gaze ratio. We can see the manufacturer, and we can see that right here, a number of gazes in the statistics, or we could see time spent. So this Ferrero seems to be a hit right there, this one. So then we can figure out, okay, you know, what if we place this on a lower shelf? What would happen if we place it here on a header or a POP display? You can also combine that information again with this view right here, and then you can see the path. So as a consumer, when I'm standing here, when I'm walking into the retail environment, what are the things that are blocking my view and my gazes? Right? I can't remember exactly how to activate that, but you can really then see these visualization pads, you know, as the consumer walks through, you know, what would be the best placement in the retail store for that specific product. So again, keep in mind that is an add-on, that consumer module. Okay, let's back up here a little bit. Let's go back to the consumer insight, switch that off. So back here, switch this off. Go back here, go back there, and zoom out a little bit. Let's pause here for a second and let's see if there's any other things going on here. Let's say, whoops, looking at the floor here. InSign display and layers, a great feature that we added recently in version 20, which allows you a very high degree of flexibility as you are switching between different products or layouts. So this menu down here in the project tab right here all the way at the bottom, this gives you a great deal of control on quickly focusing on certain parts of the store or products. So what can you do with this? For example, you can see here that the trade show branding layer has been hidden. That's that little donut icon that you see here. So if I disable that, so I'm going to visualize this, we can see here in the background that the InSign display, obviously on my my new wall, it doesn't look that good, but now that gets visualized, right? Let's look at this here, trade show layout, or let's look at this here, section A, section B. So if I have section B and I hide this, automatically an entire part of my store gets hidden. And that's the part right there. So this entire part here, apart from my clutter, apologies, mess in aisle 2, gets hidden, right? So again, right here, section B, quickly activate that, and the entire section is there. So this is a really nice way for you to quickly swap out, you know, different trials, different types of banners, in-store display, swap out different headers. What does it look like with this one? Each time you do that, you simply go into project and generate a high resolution screen cap, which you can do, by the way, from here. So let's talk output a little bit as we're approaching the top of the hour. The actual store itself with all the products can be saved as a store visualizer project. So that is, in my case, my 110 megabyte file, extension VTPR. Okay, that's one. Number two, we can export right here. And this export is the store including a spherical viewer. So think of this as a self-contained repository, Mac or PC. Depending on the size of your store, this can get a fairly large installer. So this will generate an exe or a DMG file that you can send to somebody who does not have a reviewer, let's call him, within Mattel or outside of Mattel. And they will double click, they will install that exe or DMG, and everything will be there. So it will have the store viewer, of course, a very scaled down version. They can only look around and pick up products. Obviously, they don't have the full functionality, as well as, you know, all the products in there. So this is a great way to share. Another way to share, I mentioned earlier, is the satellite app, right? So there is a Store Visualizer satellite application that your reviewer can download. Let's say that person's in Europe, in France, they download that, you send them the store, and we're working on making that available over the cloud, and then they can see. So that's kind of taking that place of that viewer, right? And they can also do consumer data capture. So with that satellite app, they can capture those statistics that you would use for your data acquisition. Another way to export is to take snapshots right here. So high resolution JPEGs, TIFFs, PNGs, and the like. And last but not least, a very popular way to share is this one right here, and that is creating movies, movie sequences, right? So selecting this toggles this timeline, and here you can set the green line are basically camera positions as you move through the store. You capture these points, you set transition, smooth or hard, and then the ones down here, these are scene events and physics. So a scene event, for example, is picking up a product, putting it back down. A physics event is what I did here, making that mess, right? So as you're walking through the store, you can create these timelines, and then you can export these movies later on as right here, MPEG-4 or QuickTime. And then you can share these on the medium of your choice. So there's a lot to this, obviously, you know, creating these movies. This was just a very high level overview. But in this 45-minute time span, we have covered about 90% of all the basic interaction that you will do on a day-to-day basis with Store Visualizer.